Welcome back to Off the Clock, guys. Today we have a special guest. I feel like I say that all the time, but every guest we have is special. Today we have RUTENDO. RUTENDO, thank you for joining us here on Off the Clock, on your Off the Clock time.
Happy to be here, man. Thank you for having me.
So yeah, I mean, I must also thank you for making the time to be here with us and chill with me and my son on Off the Clock.
The only reason I came, I always wanted to see the younger version of you. That's the only reason I
came. Which is better. I agree. I concede. So I'm just going to go straight into it.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, you're famous. You're a celebrity. You wrote 2 books. And, I mean, how do you sleep? I mean, how's your sleep? Do you know, some people say they sleep like a baby.
Yeah.
They wake up every 3 hours and cry, or they sleep the whole night. I mean, just tell me a little bit about your sleep.
I think fame is relative, but you know, I was telling to somebody else saying that fame and fortune, I've realized, are not twins. If anything, they're distant cousins. You can be famous but it's broke as hell. Or you can have money and nobody knows you. But I think coming to your point, based just in terms of what I do, and I've obviously done a lot of publicity around the 2 books I've written. And I think, you know, the guiding light or the sense check for me, because I'm in my mid-40s, or I'm 46, so I guess there's nothing to hide there. But I think because you've got, you know, you've been married, I've got 3 wonderful boys, a wonderful wife, is that it gives you kind of a sense check in terms of everything that you do with regards to how you respond, how you react. When people tell you something, at the end of the day, you go home to your wife and your kids. And that's sort of the leveling. And whatever you do, it kind of, you kind of resonate off that to say, okay, what I'm doing right now, how does this sense check with my wife, with my kids? So that's the guiding light. And so that's what makes me sleep, ultimately, when all is done. If I come back from an event, and this is why it's great even seeing you, father and son, in the session, is that I sometimes come back and my kids will say, Dad, that was great, or absolutely a disaster. And you take it, but it's because it's coming from the people you care the most for. That's the guiding light.
But how many hours do you sleep? I mean,
No,
10 hours,
no, I'm not Steve Jobs or I sleep. I think if I go to bed at 9, I'll wake up nicely at 6. So if I go to bed at 8, I'll wake up at 8. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night. Maybe there's something that's really stressing you out. But I've never been robbed of sleep much. Let's just say sleeping is not a difficulty.
So let me follow up on that, because I mean, 8 to 6, I mean, look like you sleep well.
Yeah, that's
in a good place. Yeah. You're talking about sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night, stuff that is stressing you. I mean, you look like a happy guy. I mean, you laugh loud, you're very chilled, and anything that stresses you. I mean, how do you manage stress, if any? I mean.
Okay, so let me start off with what stresses me. I think, look, I'm not superhuman. I think from a macroeconomic perspective, you know, similar to you, Peter, a huge passion for the continent, Africa, what we can do. So when we are going through sort of economic challenges, social challenges, whether it's motivated by one reason or the other, because it affects the well-being of people, that can be a bit frustrating. As you know, I'm originally from Zimbabwe, so we went through sort of a socio-economic dilemma which had long-term effects, which have been felt today. So it's never great when you see glimpses of that. Not that you want them to happen that way, but that in itself stresses me out. From a personal point of view, you know, it's if my kids all play sports. My eldest son was a school captain, and he was a leader. And this year, there were certain things he wanted to achieve, he didn't achieve. Which was whether it was a competition or some big tournaments, and I was there on the sidelines and the times it happened, and that used to stress me out because you're not playing but you're feeling for him. But at the same time, when you come through it, you realize he's actually come out a better man, and that applies to all the kids. So I'm just giving you samples of things that stress me out. Obviously, when if my wife is not happy, that always stresses you out as a man. Yeah. But how do I deal with stress? I think one from a religious perspective, because I'm a Christian, that's one of the key components in terms of something I draw not only for myself as my family. I used to play basketball. I love playing basketball, but right now I've got 1 or 2 injuries. But what I do is I do a lot of spinning in the gym. I don't go to gym to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I go to gym so that I don't die at 40, I die at maybe 90, 100. So I'm not looking for a six-pack. I'm content with who I am. But also watching family time. Actually, the greatest stress relief for me is watching my kids participate in sport or do an event or just watch them do that. I think that's one of my greatest relief in sport. So during Christmas season, when we have to be home with relatives and you're not out there enjoying what they're doing, I kind of miss that. But that's more or less me.
Okay. Just maybe before Tlhatsi come in, a follow-up question. I mean, 3 boys, somebody who doesn't have 3 boys, so like you kind of blessed, you're lucky. Yeah. How do you spend time with them? Do you spend time with them individually or just with sport? I mean, you can see how I spend time with my son.
Yeah, it's quality time.
Which is kind of, different. Yeah. My daughter's very jealous of us now, but I spend time with her as well. So how do you spend time with your boys?
So, before, I used to travel a lot, outside South Africa, business trips. I remember last year I was doing like 5 days a month in Nigeria, and those Nigerian trips.
Painful.
It drains. You need a week to recover before you think. But it's always a hustle. I mean, I love being in Nigeria, Kenya, but coming back to your point, Peter, I think how I spend. I think now I'm not traveling outside the country a lot. And it's actually forced me to engage. I mean, obviously school is the mainstay of their life. They're quite active. They're involved in a lot of activities. And I try and be there as much as possible, especially now because I'm kind of independent and my wife is working a proper 8 to 5 job. I just say I'm faking it to make it. But what it has helped me is that it's allowed me to, take them to school, pick them up, drop them. And in my past career life, when I've been full-time corporate, like whether it was Sage or Deloitte or Elevate, you get kind of time off, but when work is demanded, you understand this, Peter. But now, because I've got that bandwidth, just taking them to school, picking them up, doesn't actually force me to start allocating times for them, because I'm just always there. And at times, they actually tease me. I get to the end of the day, the evening, and I'll say, guys, they know that I like my British comedies on BBC, on British television. Okay. Those old, dry humor kind of, but they start like at 8. So and they laugh because they don't enjoy them. But I say, this is my time now where I can watch a Father Brown or hear, those
mind your language.
Yeah, those kind of, whereby even when it's the detective investigation series, where the cops don't have a gun and they have a baton stick to chase after the Tsotsis. That's old British humor. And you watch that and you say, God, this will never work in South Africa. But that's how I spend time with them and also make time for myself.
Okay, I hope they don't think you're boring.
I think they sometimes do. My wife also teases me about it.
So, I mean, okay, I also had questions about, like, you have 3 boys, how do you spend time with them? Yeah. It's like, it must be a lot as well. Yeah. But for you yourself, what do you enjoy doing in your own free time, besides winding down and watching your dry comedy?
So do you know what? Like this time last year, every week I was playing social basketball, and that was for me was a nice outlet. I think I could be, and when I say social basketball, it's not. There are guys who just meet on a weekend, and they do half-court basketball, and it's rough, it's street ball. But these are guys who are similar age, some are older. And it's a place of release. And you find some guys get emotional, other guys you think he's a 5-year-old, another thinks he's an 8-year-old, but you realize we're all adults here. But it's a place where we kind of men become men, and basketball is a very contact sport. And you realize these are guys trying to relieve their age. But the reason I'm highlighting that it was very comforting and a nice space to be in. So that was the one thing. Unfortunately, I got frustrated because I was having problems with my knees, so I had to stop for the season. And I'll be honest with you, I think last year a big thing was also, and I'm talking from last year because something significant happened this year, which I'll talk about later on. But, we're going on holidays with the kids and spending time with the family, whether it's in Joburg, out of the country, that always makes a big difference. This year has been, I'll be honest, this year has been a bit disruptive because my father passed away at the beginning of the year in January. Man. So yeah, but you know when somebody was telling me at the funeral, it was a bit of driving. He says, when your father passes away, you know that you're next. Yeah, I'm laughing it out, but at the time I didn't think it was funny. I said, okay, this is very comforting. I said,
must have been your best friend.
Yeah, no, it was, those relatives who come and they've drunk a bit too much. So, you can't be angry with them because it's your blood. But I mean, he left a legacy and we celebrated his life. But so this year, I think it's been a reality whereby you realize, because I'm the eldest in my family. Funny enough, I'm talking about 3 boys. So in my family, I've got 2 brothers. So we're 3 boys, and each of us are 2 years apart. And I've got 3 boys with my wife, and each of my kids are 2 years apart. So it seems the genes replicated. But
it's like, why change the framework?
Yeah, why change the framework? So coming back to your point in terms of this year has been a sort of me taking over, not in a dramatic sense as the family head, but at the same time trying to be a father, which I am, and a husband. So it's been a bit of a journey where it's a transition from what I used to have. Because, when you've got your father and your mother there, you kind of do sense checks. When they are no longer there, obviously you've got the bigger ecosystem of the African family. But it's a bit of a paradigm shift, and it takes longer to adjust to than I thought. So I'm going through a transitioning stage. That's how I always put it.
Great.
Is there something you can relate to, Dad?
Yeah, look, I'm kind of in a different place, kind of a senior on the table now, or on this circle. By that I mean, I come from a big family, so we come from a big family, and I think what I think it's important is that the family, African family support that you talk about. If the family is big, you there's so many buttons you can press when when my father passed, all the boys were there, and we did most of you were there, most of the kind of heavy lifting and make it. It felt so easy, but I think he knew that we were there, and we were gonna take care. It was quite difficult when my mother passed. It's it's a very sad moment, because I just think that children have a deeper connection with their mothers than their father, and it just shows differently, So that's how I relate with it. But I'm grown now. I'm back.
So how old are all your boys then?
18, 16, 14 this year.
18, 16, 14. Matric, grade 10, grade 8.
Matric, and I was just saying to my wife that, one thing I've realized is that, going back in terms of how you think and what you're thinking of doing. When I was 20, you wanted to rule the world. And then when I was 30, you wanted to rule the world, but you're no longer in a hurry. The biggest thing I think for me is, even with my kids, whatever I do, is you want to leave a legacy. And it's not just about wealth or money. For me, legacy is like what you guys are doing now, father and son, because that in itself can't be tarnished. It can't be, as a memory, it motivates, it inspires. So that's when I think of me now with my kids, is everything I do is intentional in the sense that, not that I wasn't intentional before, but they are more conscious of it in terms of you wanting to leave a legacy.
So allow me to follow up because I've always wanted to ask you this. Why did you write the books? I mean, is it for your obituary, for the legacy, or I always wanted to ask you, or you wrote the books to make the money, to be famous?
No, you don't make money, I can tell you that. Funny stories, let me tell you out. And it shows okay, it's actually self-explanatory. When I was in Form 1, which is grade 8 in South Africa, I was at a mission school. I went to my English teacher, Mrs. Guarada, I'll never forget her. And this is when I was 14, 13 years old. Used to take my essays from English class. I was in grade 8 or Form 1. And she would read them to the grade 9s, my English essays, because she said I was such a good writer. And obviously, you know, I was at a mission school in the rural areas, young. It was kind of wow. Obviously, the grade 9s never like that because, you know, you're a junior. This kid, Johnny come lately, whatever. But anyway, but I forgot. For me, it was never an issue. By the time I finished A-levels, high school, I did pure sciences, you know, physics, maths, chemistry. Not because I was a genius, but everybody says, you know, if you want a career in life, do the physics, do the sciences. Anyway, but it was when I started doing a lot of keynotes about doing business in Africa. This is like 30, 40 years later. And I came across a keynote that I wanted to do, which was about doing business in Africa. I put it together, I put the whole Muhammad Ali thing, and that's why Rumble in the Jungle Reloaded came as a book, which I later wrote. And I remember specifically there was a sort of a key event that happened. I was asked, I was a member of the British Chamber at the time, and Theresa May, you know, when she came down, the Prime Minister came down to South Africa, they asked me to do a keynote to the business delegation she was leading, which was quite a good thing. So I did the keynote.
Put that in the book?
It's to come up in the next version of the book. So I did the keynote, and as I finished, a gentleman came to me, and I'll wind it back to Mrs. Guarada, the grade 8 story. And he said to me, I remember Theresa May came about 5 years ago, and he said to me, I enjoyed your keynote, it was powerful, etc., etc. I said, okay, wow, thank you for allowing me to put the story together. And then he gave me his business card, and it was David Schwimmer. David Schwimmer is the CEO of the London Stock Exchange. And I said to myself, wow, I've just done something brilliant, but imagine if I had a book or I had written something, I could have given this guy, I could have taken it back and put it in the library of one of the most powerful bosses in the world. Imagine from a branding perspective, etc., etc. So I couldn't give him anything. Anyway, fortunately, 2 or 3 months ago, I sent him a copy, I connected with him, and he's got it. But the reason I'm saying all of this is that at that moment when it happened, I realized the importance of something that teacher in grade 8 had picked up about me, that I'd underestimated, and had seen the potential. And it was like an aha moment. And when I wrote the book, it was, it was sort of to extend my branding, but it was also a fulfillment to realize, gosh, I've actually got something I can contribute based on a gift that I've got, which can be unique in every person. But it was inspiration. And when I wrote that book, I remember one of the first copies I actually sent was to her. She's now based in California in the US. She left Zimbabwe a long time ago. But it's a bit of a long story, but it was a cumulative process of over years in terms of something I realized, and I said to myself, I should have started this earlier. But that's only my only regret. But I'm fortunate that I'm still able to do it now.
But I mean, how do you feel about this, the before and after? You authored 2 books,
yeah.
And I mean, you know my story.
Yeah.
Currently working behind the scene on a book.
Yes,
and,
I'm looking forward to read it.
And one of my friend, German guy, Holger, he authored a book called The Iceberg is Melting,
okay,
which is probably New York top seller.
Yeah.
I think he's done about 5 million copies.
Wow, I'd love to get the one day.
You know, and then he's done the second book, which was not so successful.
Yeah.
But it's kind of changed a lot because he's, you know, kind of that book made him, celebrity.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, how do you feel before and after the book? I mean,
I wish I could do 5 million. That would cover me for the rest of my life. But you know what? It's a big sense of relief. You know, one of the things, I worked with a publisher because I intentionally didn't want to self-publish. I wanted to publish mainstream with a publisher. And I remember there was a great guy called Tim Richmond, Burnett Media. And he used to say to me, Rutendo, as you're writing the book, my book is a light read. It's not like an encyclopedia, it's not thick. But he said to me, he used to ask me 3 questions. He says, right. I remember one of the first primary questions was, why are you writing the book? Who do you want to target? What do you want to achieve out of the book? Because if you answer those 3 questions, you're going to be a guiding light. Because we all agree, if you go into exclusive books, there are some books on that shelf that are gathering dust. Nobody will ever read them. And you can't do a book that everybody will read. That's the reality. So it was sort of to say, but hang on, who are the people you want to target, what you want to achieve, and why are you doing it? And that gave me such clarity with regards to when I write the book in terms of, like with Rumble in the Jungle, it was to give insight to organizations, especially multinationals coming to do business in Africa, but give them a different perspective of how to expand and grow, not getting too much economics, but just understanding the heartbeat of Africa. The second one, which I'm more excited, which is about the reflections of the son of the soil, was actually a habit that came out of COVID. I was bored during lockdown, and every night I used to publish a proverb. I'll look for an African proverb from one country, and I'll publish it on my LinkedIn. And then eventually somebody just says, why don't you just compile it into a book? But to answer your question, Peter, it's just relief. It's a piece. It's like, wow, I've left a piece of myself that even when I've gone, there's something that is left.
A legacy.
It left a legacy. And, and you know what? Sometimes we get a wrong assumption that to leave a legacy, you have to be wealthy, you have to be a billionaire. But you realize, gosh, even if 10 people read that book, even if one person has read the book, I've left something down the years that makes a big difference. And that for me is, and it makes a big difference in one or small way. So that for me is a big thing.
How many copies have you sold?
Do you know what?
Stop counting?
No. It's not a lot. Look, okay, I'll show you some scary statistics. So for Rumble in the Jungle, I officially launched it in August last year. And I did my book launch in January. I think today, plus or minus, I think over the year, I think, I'll be honest with you, maybe 700, 800, a lot. No, sorry, then I've sold directly, like when I do lectures, etc. So let's say 1,000, Rumble in the Jungle, August, Reflections of the Son of the Soil. Because what happened is I'm positioning this like as a coffee book, corporate gift, because of nature, coffee table thing.
Coffee table book, yeah.
The book was published a week and a half ago. 2 months ago, I had already sold 850 before the book was published. Because I would talk to CEOs and say, look, if you've got a Pan-African strategy, you want a corporate gift, etc., here's a story, a proverb from each African country. As of today, 2 law firms have bought 600. I'm probably on in 3 months, I'm on about 2,000 books. And it's because of the nature of the beast. And I was actually surprised. And I was getting frustrated by publishers saying, but you know what? Why is it not selling that much in the bookshops, etc.? But I've just realized that the world is big. But it's funny. So in one, it's taking me 1,000. The other one is taking me 2,000. But I'm not stressed because what I'm finding exciting now, especially with the first one, Rumble in the Jungle, when I go and do, because I told you I'm part-time faculty at business schools. Yeah. And the framework that I use, I guess, which was smart, the framework I use when I teach guys about strategy and leadership is actually defined in the book. So I'll have a class of 50. After that, they get the book as part of the course, which is great because that's why I wrote the book. So I'm no longer worried about selling it in bookstores, etc. I'm actually using it to impart knowledge and to reaffirm that knowledge, which for me is a big thing.
All right. So in this whole, when you decided to write a book, did that take you out of your comfort zone or were you just...
No, it did. It's not easy. Look, I did my PhD, finished in 2014. So what it helped me is when you do, I think after I did my PhD, because you've been writing for 4 years, you're doing your thesis. And when I finished it, after about 2 years, I said, Flip, I'm getting bored again, you know. So it takes you out of your comfort zone, because especially when you want to do something that is good quality. I wanted to be able to, and I'm going to use your father, I wanted to be able to give a book that when Peter is reading it, is in first class, in business class. He's not ashamed to be opening the book and reading it. It has to be quality. It has to be high caliber. It's not, I don't know, you know, like the best book in the world, but I wanted to have a certain standard. So it does push you out of your comfort zone, because it challenges you, challenges your mindset, you have discipline. And I interviewed some guys who were quite close. One guy is actually late now. But it does push you out of your comfort zone, but in a good way.
In a good way. So I'm sure your PhD also took you out of your comfort zone doing that.
No, it did. It did, but I enjoyed it because I did something. I was actually working full-time. I was an executive at a UK-listed company. I was fortunate that the topic I was doing about doing business in Africa, impact of strategy in emerging markets, was in line with what our organization was doing at the time. So I actually enjoyed it, and it was challenging. It stretched me, but also thankfully I have a supportive wife, and that all helped it. But it does. But I've realized what doesn't challenge you doesn't make you.
So I guess my last question was, what's next?
That's a good question. Do you know what? I clearly knew that by the time I hit 55, so when I'm 10 years younger than your father, okay, I said to myself, I want to be independent. I want to have done my corporate journey, but be working with independently, but being able to walk into a Harvard or an Oxford, participate as a faculty in a leadership program about doing business in Africa, give some insights to guys who are hungry to do business in Africa, executives, and get a reasonable premium for it. But at the same time work with African young guys developing leadership, corporate organizations. That's what I want to do. But there's also the practicality, because those, you know, you still have to pay school fees, like my wife reminds me. Peter knows what I'm talking about. School fees don't get paid on wishes and all. So, do you know what? I think what I'm doing now is very fulfilling. You know, my book is out. It's making an impact. I wanted to take it to the next level, but they use that in terms of in terms of equipping others and developing others, and that's happening a lot at the business schools. So I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of defining that more accurately now, and I'm enjoying that. But it's also a bit nervy because you don't know what's around the corner. But I think in itself, it forces you to think on your feet. So. I hope to give you a clear answer one day, but right now, let's just call it work in progress.
So when you come back, you'll tell us.
Yeah, I will.
So maybe 2 quick questions. We know you have to go back to work. You know, up until now, you've spoken a lot about your boys, very little about your wife.
Yes. And when she has this podcast, she has that part, I'm going to have no supper for the whole week.
Yeah, so exactly about that. I mean, you look like... You look like you're really eating well. I'm sure she's cooking nice meals for you, African meals.
She does.
But how do you spend time with her? You know, because you know, raising the boys, I'm sure the noise, it's rowdy with the boys. They're breaking things, they're arguing. I mean, you need some really, you know, some quality time with her. How do you do that?
No, you know, she's really my sense check. What I call a P, everybody else calls a Prax, but you know, as a husband, you get VIP names for your wife, so I call her P. But she's an absolute blessing. She works, you know, in the hospital groups. We've met at one of the MCHM dinners we've had. She's an absolute blessing. I mean, we've known each other for over 16 years when she was in primary school. I wasn't a cradle snatcher. I just said we knew each other when she was in primary school. But I think for us is it's a matter of living life together. I mean, like your friend. She's a friend. She's my advisor. She's the finance director of the house. She's the CEO of the house. She's the CFO. But she's my... no, I stopped asking Chief. You know, when you have an organograph in the house, then you realize, do you know what, every position here... Yeah, it's taken, but she's been an absolute blessing, and you know, through the hard times and the tough times, and she, I believe, as even before we got married, she went through quite a hard time because her father passed away early, and I was with her at the time, but she's actually been my strength and my bedrock, and I'm so privileged that she loves me, and yeah, and I think I've said this, you know, I've saved the best for last. So that's my parting shot when she sees the podcast.
This is how you get out.
Yeah. But no, she's an absolute blessing. And we spend time, we're spending time together. I guess with kids at different stages, we wanted to go out more. But every date night that we get, you know, we treasure it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I can relate to that because sometimes when we have a family commotion, and my wife always tells us guys, I said, look, you know what, we met before you guys, so.
That's a valid point. Case closed.
We just stay out of it.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
So, yeah, Rutendo, thank you very much for,
thank you for having me, man.
Spending the time with us.
Okay.
Good luck with the book,
thank you.
The books, and the work that you're doing. You are a role model, I mean, in the stuff that you're doing.
Thank you.
Very few people have done, you know, what you've done at your age. I mean, you kind of been living life for two people and you don't even know. So thank you very much for making the time. I appreciate that.